Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and today we're going to talk about the feature in the DevToolbox, the Profiler. Now, in a lot of my videos, you see this very colorful box down here at the bottom, and you might not know what that is. That is the Profiler, and to describe the Profiler, we got to go over some of its features that it can do. So you can find the settings in DevToolbox settings here and on the Profiler tab. And there's several options here, and we'll go over each in one. We're going to turn everything on. Now, some of these are invalid anymore, like the templates one. Memory execution doesn't come on by default anymore. But most of these still work. We're just going to turn everything on so we can go over it one at a time. Actually, we're going to turn the disable ACP off so we don't have to switch back and forth. All right, so of course you can disable it in ACP. Now the show to, this one is the Profiler itself is meant to be used in dev mode and in dev mode only, or in theory that's where it's only supposed to be used. But I've decided, based on a request from a friend of mine who uses it, he wants to be able to define some of the slowdowns in the live site. So basically what this does, you can add a username here, like we're going to add mine. And what this does, when I turn this off, when I take this out of in dev mode, it will still be running in the background, but only for that user. So if you tell it to show to me, and it says, "Oh, we're not in dev mode, but oh, hey, that is the user that's allowed to see it," it will trigger everything. It will turn on all the features of the Profiler, basically. I highly do not recommend the the toolbox to be installed on a live site at all. To be honest with you, it's not designed to. It's designed to be working on in a dev, in a local host, basically. It's not meant for the IPS shared. Definitely not meant for there. It's actually got features disabled. Like if you try to install it on an IPS shared hosting or the community in the cloud, I think it's called, it will actually disable a bunch of features because it will detect it and go, oh, nope, 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 nope. We can't have it here. Because I've gotten into some trouble with IPS because apparently that's what people were doing. They were installing it on their community or their community in the cloud and giving IPS a headache because for whatever reason they didn't turn off like write functions and stuff. Anyway, let's go over. Other than that, I mean, use at your own peril. Basically, anything in these videos, especially when it comes to the toolbox. This is, like I said, this is solely intended to be used in a development environment on a local host. It is not meant to be used in a live setting. You can use it on a remote host if you want, as long as, like I said, as long as it's a not a publicly accessible site, and only you are going to be using it for development. That's the only time that I would say to use this at all. But I do have a feature in there that allows you to use it on a live site, but like I said, use it at your own peril. All right, the next feature is to turn it off in ACP because otherwise it will show on the front end and in the ACP. But the ACP, for whatever reason, I can't get it to push this bottom part up. So sometimes it will hide stuff down here at the bottom that you might not want it to be hiding. So that's why that feature exists, more or less. And then again, there might not be any reason for you to have it in the ACP. Some people like, well, I don't do a whole lot of development in the ACP, but I would point out that some of us do. All right, execution. That's what this little box is for. There's two types. There's execution and execution time. Basically, if we turn off execution time, doesn't actually affect this because execution time is different than the execution. The execution is the overall, like how long does it take everything in PHP till the point where it starts building the compiler? How long did that take to execute? And it's got two numbers here. It's got, well, three numbers here. It's got complete execution time, and that's total. That's everything. And then with the second one, it's just the IPS framework itself. And then the profiler, how long did it take for the profiler to build itself? And those are two important numbers. Like, so you these exist here so you know which one is taking the more time. I wanted to rule out that it could be a slowdown caused by the profiler. So the profiler measures its time by itself, and the framework measures its own time by itself, and then it combines them for a total time, and subtracts on these others. But it displays the total time. But if you click on it, it shows it. Now there is a way to extend the like the count times. Like if you click on the query log here, it will show you the execution time and the memory, and this is what it will basically track and stuff like this. But I have it disabled. There is ways to add it to the profiler, and I might do videos on these next two options here, like the execution times and the memory options. But anyway, those aren't really something that comes default with the profiler. So, but they are ways you can add it to it. And if there's an interest in it, I'll show you how to add those two things to the profiler if you need to. The next thing is this total memory, and what this does, this is this setting here. So if we turned it off, and well, you can turn off the execution too if you don't want to see that. But we might not want to turn it off because I was talking about it. Basically, what memory does, it just shows you the amount of memory that PHP is using at the end of its run. That's all it does. The next one is files, and this is all the included files that are loaded when the script gets executed. So you can actually see IPS loads a bunch of, well, this is in dev, so it's going to be loading a bunch of files it probably doesn't need. Like it's going to be loading the language files, it's going to be loading template files, it's going to be loading hooks, it's going to be loading all kinds of stuff. But this gives you an idea. Like if I go to the front end and I refreshed it, you would see that it's just on the landing page on the forums with hardly anything on it. It's including 351 files. So there's a fair amount of files that IPS loads. So if you ever wonder why IPS is kind of slow in dev mode, that's probably why. It's especially if you're on Windows. In Linux, it's a little bit more tolerable. In Mac, I don't know about Mac, but I know in Windows it's a. I want to shoot myself. I can't not develop in Windows because of how slow PHP is in Windows compared to Linux. Anyway, that's another conversation. All right, so that's for files. So if we turned it off, it would now show just query log. We've already hidden memory files. Now we're into the query log. What the query log is, since the profiler actually replaces, it only operates if you have the query log constant turned on. If you got it set to false, it doesn't show. If you got it set to true, it will. There is one other. There is DT profiler. You can probably ignore this. This is stuff for me, but you can turn it on to get extra little data bits. But for the most part, you don't really worry about that constant. But it's the query log that you really worry about, because otherwise it won't show up. And since I'm replacing that, I decided to go ahead and add my own into it. And what this does, it tracks all the logs, and it tells you different information than the IPS one. The IPS one would just show you the query, and if you clicked on it, it would show you the backtrace. And mine does too. So but it also adds if it's a read or a write. So if you're writing data or reading the data, it will tell you that. It also gives you how long it took to execute and how much memory that query took to execute. So this could come in handy if you've got a really slow query or one that's a memory hog. This might actually help you. There's no particular order. They're just the order that they come in. So I didn't want to mess with that because these are the order. Like I said, these are the order that they come in. It's not any. I'm not reordering them in any way by how slow they are, how much memory. I might add those options one day. But I really don't use this that much. If I'm experiencing a slow query or something, like if I look down here and I see something like that's just like really slow, like is if you click on that, it shows you the slowest query you've got, and it's backtrace, which doesn't really work that well because everything goes to the init. But if I see something that's really slow, or I notice that the page is loading really slow with a bunch of data, I will look at this to see which one's causing it, and I will try to go fix it. But other than that, I don't really use it that much. I know some people use it much more than I do. But you can't turn it off because, like I said, it replaces the query log. So that's why there's never an option to turn it off or back here, there's not an option to disable it because it replaces it. So why would you want to turn it off? All right, the next one is environment, and it's just the way it sounds. It's the request variable and the cookie and the server, and I think that's the only ones that it shows. But it shows you all these the environment data that you have, so you can see like maybe you're doing a post or something, and the form's not populating correctly or something. You can go look down at that and go, oh, that's why, because it's not sending that data, or whatever. But that's basically what that's for. You can turn that one off as well. Now, this next one, I do plan on re-implementing this, but for right now, it's broken because of a change that I made to the settings here. I changed how debug templates work because it wasn't working for CMS templates, but it was working for most everything else. And that's because because Pages implements its own template system. It wasn't working with that, so I had to fix it. And in fixing it, I removed the template feature from Profiler by accident. So I'll add that back in. Basically, what that did is right here before CSS and after query log or environment, it would show templates, and if you clicked on that, it would show you all the loaded templates that that page is using. And I think that's a useful feature too, especially if you're trying to figure out how they're doing something. Like if you looked here, you'd have no idea what templates they're using, but if you clicked on that, it would tell you all the templates that they were using. So that's useful. Same with the CSS and JavaScript. It's basically the same thing. It just shows you all the JavaScript and CSS that the template is using. So if I was to click on that, it would say, hey, and if I got the things set up for it, it would automatically open it in my IDE. So it opens up the Compose. Yeah, that's the one I clicked, Compose CSS, and it would just open it up to the beginning here. This way I could see which CSS is loaded. I could even search it to see if my specific CSS is loaded, because there's been times where I've been debugging, my CSS isn't loading. I didn't realize it wasn't loading. I thought something was wrong with my CSS. And same with JavaScript. Again, if you click on them, it opens them up in IPS. Or in your IDE, I should say. That's basically what those three did. And you can turn them off if you don't want them. And the next one is JavaScript variables. Now, there are other JavaScript variables, but since they don't run through the method and they're actually included in the template directly, like if we went to go look at the where are you? Core dev HTML global include. As you can see, there's already several of them that are defined that that they're actually defined in the template itself. So these aren't captured because I haven't taught the profiler yet to read these yet, and I probably should because they probably come in handy at some point. But it only captures the ones that are defined in on the output one, the output JS vars. And basically what that does, it shows all of them that'll load it, and it gives you its value. And if it's an array, it will be more in depth. But that just helps you, again, that just helps you determine if the values are being set correctly and whatnot. And again, that's one thing you can turn off if you don't want it. All right, now we're, I'll go over the debug one here, but I want to go over, okay, on the debug, again, this goes to, in the video for the Dev Center, there's that debug class you can create. And that's what this is for in the profiler. And I'll do a separate video on this because it is a little bit more in depth than I want to get into on this one. So we're going to skip these two here. We're just going to turn them off because they don't show up unless there's actually a debug to show. All right, so the next one is logs, and that's just the IPS logs in the support, the system logs. So what that does, again, it just displays them. Displays, you can tell it to display as many as you want, but by default it's 25. And if you click on them, it shows you the error, where it happened at, kind of like what you would see in IPS system logs. So if you don't want that, you can turn it off. And now it's just showing like the query log. And now this stuff you can't really turn off or change. Well, you can turn off the Git stuff, but we'll go over everything one at a time. The only thing left is the Git log and the show changes. And basically what this the Git log or the Git data does, it shows you the application that you're working in, the version that you've got currently set, the last commit to it, and the commit message, what branch you're on. Now you can't switch branches from this. I didn't intend this to be a replacement for a Git client like Git Kraken or even your IDE. I just intended this to give you some information. And it show you if it's been changed or not. It shows which applications have been changed. So if you got several applications you're working on, and they have repositories, it will scan through them and go, oh, this one is waiting for a commit. So that's basically what that's for. And you can turn it off if you don't use it. I don't really use it that much. So if it does break, some people say it doesn't work in Windows very well, but the people in Mac and Linux say it works fine. So I don't really use it that much. I add it in as a request, so it's there. Now there's other stuff. As you can see, we ran out of options to disable, but there's still stuff showing. And that's query log. Like I said, it replaces the query log, so I didn't see a point in having an option to disable it. The next one tells you what controller you're in. So we are currently on Toolbox modules, admin settings, and what method we're in. We're in manage, and we're on line 71. So if we click on that and we got it set up, it will take us to that. That's all it really does. Again, the slowest query just tells you, it's just a quick way to see the slowest query out of all of them. So if you got a bunch of them, like just here it's 26, but on the front page it is 37. And the slowest query is different. Nothing found. That's because of the way it runs. You can ignore that. All right, now on the system one, you click on that. It tells you what version of IPS you're on, what version of PHP you're on, and what version of MySQL you have. And if you click on the PHP one, there is currently a bug, but it's not in Toolbox. It is in PHP query, and I'm not entirely sure how to fix it because it's not my code. It's not my code. It's just my code using it, and it's throwing this error. But it's supposed to give you the PHP info. That, like, you come over here to here, support, and you click on that. That takes you to the full page. But that one, what it was supposed to do is it's supposed to open it up in a window. And it currently doesn't like PHP 7.3 because I think it started in 7.3. In 7.2 it works fine, and in 7.1 it does too. The next one is AdMinor. This is actually a new feature. It's going to throw an error because it's not set up to work in the ACP yet. What it does is it brings up a AdMinor page, or a kind of hacked version of AdMinor, and that doesn't require a login or anything like that. So be very careful with this. Like, again, this is why I said this should not be installed on a live site, and why you should just be very, very careful with Profiler enabled. Because anybody can see this if it's on and it's in dev mode. Don't run your live site in dev mode ever, and don't give access to this to every person on your site. Basically, that's why it disables itself. Basically, because of stuff like this. This gives you access to your database. As you can see, it's not fully implemented yet. It's something I'm working on, and it just gives you access to the database, a quicker and easier thing to use than the SQL toolbox back here, which is all right. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's no AdMinor. I mean, I'll tell you that much. It's no AdMinor. But that's that. The third-party apps and plugins, it just allows you to disable and enable applications and plugins for testing reasons. So that's all it really does. And you can't disable Toolbox itself. Especially even if you click the disable all, it won't disable Toolbox. It'll disable everything else but Toolbox. But that just allows you to debug stuff really quickly and stuff like that, like seeing if it's another application causing the error or a plugin or whatnot. So clear caches. Basically, what this does is go to support and click on something isn't working correctly and click continue. One of the features that does is clears the cache, but it also does other things that we don't necessarily need in dev mode. But there might be times where, because even though we're in dev mode, it still creates data stores and the caches and whatnot. So it might actually be something that we need to clear out from time to time. And the last feature to the profiler that's a relatively new feature is the snippets. And what the snippets is, there's two of them. There's Bitwise Values and Lorem Ipsum. Bitwise Values, if you ever go to a class that has Bitwise, you might run into it where you get into these bigger numbers and you might just forget how to multiply. And this just gives you a quick reference up to 45 keys on Bitwise, and you can just copy these. I might make it a little bit different, like you can set the last value or something and it copies automatically the next value, or you can tell it which class to insert it into. I don't know. I just have it here because I'm horrible at math sometimes, and this just helps me out. I can find the last one that was implemented and just copy the next one and go from there. It's not really all that useful, but it's useful to me because I'm an idiot sometimes when it comes to math. So the other one is actually, I think it's pretty useful. It's a lorem ipsum generator. And if I come over here, I can tell it to give me 5 words. I mean, I could set this number to any amount that I want. You know, you can set it to 21. I could tell it to give me 21 words, 21 sentences, or 21 paragraphs. And it will copy it to my clipboard. This might not actually work in all. If it's a browser that doesn't support that, it actually displays the text that you can copy. But as you can see, it copies it to my clipboard, and then I can just submit it. And this will give me plenty of text to work from if I'm doing type settings kind of stuff in my HTML. I put it here because it's just easy access. It's probably something that doesn't go with the profiler very well, but it's pretty much because the profiler is on every page, and I do run it in the ACP too. It just gives me the ability to quickly have access to it without having to go dig for it and stuff like that. Well, guys, that's pretty much it on the profiler. If you have any questions, let me know. If you got any ideas to improvement, let me know. I'm always interested in improving this application because it's meant for the community. And I mean, just on a side note, I wish the community would um, come together a little bit better, but that's a whole different video. Anyway, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. Hey, if you have any questions or comments, let me know, and I'll get back to you guys. You have a good day now.